You're listening to the Sisters in Loss podcast, a faith-based grief and loss podcast for Black women, where you will hear stories of miscarriage, infant loss, stillbirth, and infertility to learn there is a testimony in tragedy. You will learn how to heal, gain clarity, find hope and peace, and turn your pain into your purpose after loss. I'm your host, Erica M. McAfee. Welcome to episode 83 of the Sisters in Loss podcast. Pregnancy, loss, and infertility can be so hard on a marriage. It can either tear the couple apart or bring them closer together. In fact, it is said that almost 80% of couples who experience a miscarriage or infertility end up in divorce. In this month of love, we will be featuring 4 couples showing by prayer, faith in God, and a strong commitment to stay together, their marriages endured the hard times of pregnancy, loss, and infertility. Today's couple is the Hutchinsons, who share their infertility and IVF journey and new book, I Still Want to Be a Mom. Shara Hutchinson went through over 6 rounds of Clomid, 2 miscarriages, 2 laparoscopic surgeries, 1 D&C, 2 failed IVF cycles, 1 failed FET and ectopic pregnancy, and was finally able to conceive her miracle baby from her 3rd round of IVF. In this episode, she and her husband Todd share their journey to parenthood, how their faith helped them endure the disappointments, and how their miracle rainbow baby inspires them every day. Here are the Hutchinsons. Well, thank you to the Hutchinsons for being on the podcast.
Oh, you're welcome. It's our pleasure.
So I'd like to begin with you all sharing a little bit about yourselves and what you do.
All right. My name is Shara Hutchinson. I am a wife, a mother. I work in ministry at my church. I have a full-time job where I manage a service and support center. Also, I am an author. I recently published a book titled I Still Want to Be a Mom that outlines my journey to getting my rainbow baby and includes tips to encourage other women as well.
And I'm Todd Hutchinson, husband, and now new father, praise God. And I also work in the IT industry. Just happy to be here on the podcast.
So take us back and tell us about your journey to parenthood, but just take us back on that journey to get into your rainbow baby.
All right. So Todd and I have been married coming up on 9 years. Actually, next week it'll be 9 years. And we just brought our first baby home this past September of last year. So he's getting ready to turn 4 months, actually, around the same time as our 9-year anniversary. And initially when we got married, we weren't really trying to conceive. We weren't preventing either. And we had no idea there were any issues going on. We just know that we weren't getting pregnant. And probably about 3 years in, actually probably about 2 years in, I kind of went to the doctor trying to see like, hey, what's going on here? And they did some blood work and checked me out to see if I was ovulating and to check on various other things. And so then they put me on this medicine called Clomid to help me ovulate because they found that I wasn't ovulating on my own. And so we tried probably about 6 or maybe 8 rounds of Clomid with no success. And I went back and I'm like, we're still not pregnant. What's going on? And at this point, it was almost 3 years. So I kind of left it alone at that because we were both going to school. We were both very busy doing a lot of things. And so I felt at that time like, well, if it's meant to happen, it'll happen and it'll happen in God's time. And so we stopped and kind of left it there. Well, maybe a few months later, I was having like some little pains in my side and I said, wonder what's going on. So I decided to go back to the doctor and they did an ultrasound and they said that I had a very large cyst on one of my ovaries. And so I was like, wow. And so they said, if it's causing you pain, then it's best for us to operate. So we're going to, do surgery, remove the cyst because it looks rather large. So I go schedule the surgery. I have the surgery. And when they get in there, they find that, in fact, my tubes, that I don't have a cyst on my ovaries. It was my tubes that were blocked. Both fallopian tubes were blocked and tucked behind my uterus, and they were bulging out so much that it appeared to be a cyst on the ovaries. And so when I woke up from the anesthesia, my doctor told me the news. And then she said, but guess what? We were able to open your tubes. So we want you to get pregnant within the next 6 months. And it was at that point that I kind of changed from, oh, it'll happen in God's time to, I really want to be a mom. Like my instincts had kicked in, and I was about 27 when we got married. So by this time I was 30, and I realized like, oh, wow, I need to step my game up here and really, really try harder. Like, there's a clock going on. And so, we got on Clomid again. A whole year passed and still no baby. And I went back. And so at this point, she sent me to a fertility specialist because she said, it is quite possible that your tubes reblocked. So I went to the fertility specialist. I had HSG done, which is, I think it's called a histosalpingogram, where they go in and shoot dye up through your uterus, through your fallopian tubes, and then monitor it with a sonogram to see if your tubes are open. And it was at that point that we discovered that my tubes had reblocked again. And so the doctor said, your tubes are blocked, and the only way to get pregnant is through in vitro. And when he said that, I instantly started crying, because in my mind, what I heard was, you're not going to have a baby. You're not going to get pregnant. And because the cost of in vitro, I'm like, well, we don't have, $15,000 to do in vitro. And so we went back and went home, and we kind of thought about that a little more. And I couldn't shake the fact that, you know what? I still want to have a baby. I still want to have a mom. So long story short, we ended up coming up with the money to do in vitro. And we told all of our friends, all of our family, everybody, like, we're doing in vitro. And in fact, a lot of our friends and family helped to donate some money to help us, as well as, our savings. And so everybody was a part of this journey. They were a part of the whole first in vitro with us. And we go to do the in vitro. And in my mind, I'm like, well, when you do in vitro, they fertilize the egg and the sperm together and implant it in your uterus. And so at that point, you are pregnant and you are going to have a baby. And so I went through with the transfer, and no one could have ever told me that it wasn't going to work. Like, the 2 weeks went by, I didn't even test early because I felt like, oh, I know for a fact that I'm pregnant. There's no way this isn't going to work. And so when I had my blood test and they told me that the pregnancy test was negative, we were both distraught. And so we had one embryo left from that particular cycle that we did. And so we decided to just go ahead and transfer that one within the next 2 months. And because we had told everybody and everybody was a part of the journey, it was so difficult to go back and say, no, we're not pregnant, or people asking for updates and saying, well, how's everything going? Did you guys find out yet? And it was just so heartbreaking. So when we decided to transfer the next embryo, we said, you know what, we're not going to tell anybody. We're just going to tell them once we're pregnant. And so this transfer was set to take place actually December of 2015. And so I'm like, oh, this will be perfect. Christmas is coming up. We'll be able to surprise everybody with a Christmas present and say we're pregnant. So we secretly transferred our last embryo, and lo and behold, it did not work. We found out just before Christmas that embryo didn't take. And not only did we not have a baby, but we also were back to square one, and we had paid money for the in vitro cycle and money for frozen embryo cycle from the last embryo that we had. And so we were back to square one. And that was even more devastating because we were out of the money and we still didn't have a baby yet. And so I'm like, God, you promised us that we were going to have a child. And we told everybody, that we were going to have a child. And now this didn't work. What are we going to do now? And so fast forward to the following year, we decided in between that time frame that we were just going to pray together. We were going to trust God. We were going to keep pressing forward and still keep believing, because I still couldn't shake the fact that I wanted to be a mom and I still wanted to have a child. And I was at home one day, probably about 6 months after that last failed cycle in 2016. And I was doing some schoolwork, and I was just sitting there, and I had a thought like, go get a pregnancy test. And it was just like so weird. I'm thinking, why would I go get a pregnancy test when I know that I need in vitro to get pregnant? And so the feeling was just so strong. So I got up from what I was doing, drove to the store, got a pregnancy test, came home, and, took the test, and lo and behold, I was pregnant naturally, and I was ecstatic. And I'm like, oh my gosh. So once again, I mean, as soon as I got the positive result, I snapped pictures of it. I sent it to everybody. I didn't even wait for my husband to get home from work, because normally I would have tried to think of something special, like how can I surprise him with this and show him, but I couldn't contain myself. And so I sent everybody messages and pictures, him telling everybody, we got our miracle, we are pregnant, and at that same time, my sister-in-law was pregnant as well. And she had just had her ultrasound probably about a week beforehand. And so when I was pregnant, I told her, I was like, guess what? We're going to be pregnant together. We're going to have our babies together. And we were just so thrilled about it. I went ahead and called the doctor because, of course, my history with my tubes and everything is scheduled an ultrasound. And they scheduled it probably for about a week after that. And once I went to the appointment, we were just ecstatic. My husband, myself, my mom were there, and we were just waiting to see this little baby with this little flickering heartbeat. And so we get into the doctor's office. They do the ultrasound. They're moving the speculum around. And finally, they locate the baby. And we see a heartbeat and see like a little baby in there. And we're just, my husband and I are staring at each other, and we're just in amazement. Like, wow. And so we look at the doctor after looking at each other, and the doctor's face doesn't look too pleased. And so I'm like, what is going on here? And so she said, yes, there is a healthy baby. Yes, you are pregnant. However, the baby is actually growing in your tubes. And because of the size of it, we can't believe that you weren't even in any pain or anything like that. We're going to have to perform surgery tomorrow. So I went from being pregnant with my sister-in-law to being told, okay, tomorrow you're going to have surgery. And the initial shock of it hit me, and I hadn't processed it quite yet. So my question to the doctor was, well, can't you just like move, this baby into the right place? I mean, I understand it's growing in the wrong place, but can you move it? And she's like, unfortunately, we can't. And that's when I realized that, wow, the miracle that I just told everybody that we had is again being snatched away. And so after that, I was thinking, well, maybe it's not meant, but I still couldn't shake that feeling like, no, we're going to have a baby. We're going to get pregnant. And so we ended up devising a way again to do in vitro at this time, because when I had the surgery for the ectopic, they actually removed both of my tubes. So now there was no way, barring a flat out miracle, that I would get pregnant naturally. And so we devised a way to do in vitro again the following year, which was 2017, and went through the whole process, did in vitro. We had one good quality embryo that made it to the fifth day. And we actually had two. One was better than the other. We implanted both of those. None of the others made it to freeze. And we got pregnant in 2017 with the one good embryo. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is it. We are about to have a baby. And I was, of course, afraid, because the last time we had that first ultrasound, we got bad news. And so I was thinking, oh, if we can just get past this first ultrasound. So we schedule our appointment. We go have our first ultrasound, and we get there, and the heartbeat's there, and everything's perfect. And so I'm like, we can breathe and relax now. We get back, and several weeks later, we go for another ultrasound, and everything's perfect. And then probably about 2.5, 3 months down the line, I started having some spotting and, different things like that. And then bleeding and clotting. And I kept getting ultrasounds, and the doctor kept saying, well, everything's fine. And lo and behold, at about, almost 4 months pregnant, after seeing the head, the hands, the feet, the fingers, the little toes, and seeing movement and hearing the heartbeat and all that stuff, just when the baby was real to me, like, yes, we're about to take this baby home, I ended up having a miscarriage in the early second trimester. And at that point, I was completely devastated, because, again, we were back to square one with not having any embryo. So we would have to do a whole nother retrieval and do in vitro all over again. And to get to that point and to lose the baby made me feel like, can I even have a child? Should I get somebody else to carry the baby for me? We were just brainstorming all kinds of ideas to figure out how can we get this baby, into the world. And again, after that, after I was able to pick myself up, I realized that I still wanted to be a mom. And so I'm like, well, if I can't shake this feeling, we have to try again. And my husband, of course, was on board. And so we ended up doing in vitro again. And last year, January, we actually transferred the day before our anniversary on January 30th. And we brought our little baby boy home in September of last year. And he was a little bit early, but he was perfect when he came out. And it was, everything came to just realization at that point, and it was all worth it. And I would do it all over again. And throughout this entire journey, one of the things that this did for me was it kind of showed me part of my purpose. And so while I was in the journey, I was, journaling all these years, and I ended up compiling, some of my notes together, my thoughts, things that helped me to survive this journey, things that helped us, pay for in vitro multiple times, how to keep the right mindset, how to have the right perspective, just all kind of stuff, and putting that into a book to share with other women to help encourage and inspire them that, if you still want to be a mom, you can.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So let's talk about your faith and really your relationship as you all both went through this journey. So really tell the listeners just how individually your faith played a role in this, especially in the perseverance and going, getting let down and going back again and just continuing to just really just have faith in God that he's going to continue to, he's going to give you the desires of your heart. So talk about your faith individually, and then talk about how it has brought you all together as a couple.
So this situation actually taught me and showed me how resilient I was when I really want something. And each time when we had a loss or a disappointment, yes, I was hurt, but I just believed that God was going to do it and that all things were possible. And even after we had the ectopic pregnancy, I was hurt. But one of the things that I said to myself was, well, all these years you haven't gotten pregnant. At least you know that you can get pregnant now. And I tried to look at the bright side, and I felt like God was giving me a glimmer of hope to hold on to. And I realized that he makes everything beautiful in its time. And while I would have appreciated a baby, several years ago and earlier, I feel like now that we have our son, it's the perfect time. And so together, my husband and I, we prayed together. We read the Bible together. We talked about our feelings, we planned together, and it really helped bring us closer together and closer to God.
Really, this journey it's rough. I mean, recently read a book, and they had this analogy we were talking about, kind of really illustrates the experience that a lot of couples go through when trying to conceive a child through IVF. And this analogy is says, it's like a man who tries to push a boulder up a hill just to watch it fall back down again. It seems like when we were going through that journey, we were pushing that boulder up the hill, trying to conceive a child. And each time we would do it, we would, experience loss after loss, or the embryos wouldn't take and whatnot. And it could be defeating. And as far as my walk with God and knowing that, God can do all things, it really made me question, if God would do it for us. And, when you're going through this type of struggle, and, you're trying to conceive a child, God gives you a child. It's a good thing to be crowned a father. It's one of the highest honors that God can give a man. They give him his own title and call him a father. It's what we call, our Father, our Heavenly Father. But it was, it really, to see our child being born was really like watching the physical manifestation of God's word, confirming, that he will fulfill our promise. But I'll be honest, my faith did waver a bit. And when we were going through the losses and stuff like that, I just remember the scriptures, in Romans 8:28 says, that all things work together for good for those who are who love God, and to those who are called according to his purpose and stuff like that. And I know God, he loves us, and we love him. And even throughout all those losses, my wife's book was birthed through those losses. And that's where the scripture even confirms it. It says we know that all things work together for good, and even through that pain, I pray that, whoever reads my wife's book, they'll see that that's going to be working together for their good. It's going to produce that perseverance, that character that they need to keep pushing that boulder up the hill until they get their rainbow baby and their promise. So it really does strengthen your relationship with God. It tests your faith to see the promise through, to see if you have the perseverance and the character to keep on trying and trying again and never taking no for an answer or a failure for an answer. I mean, that's what I think it did for me spiritually and through my faith.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So what is one thing that you learned about each other throughout this journey? I know we talked about our faith, but really, what's one thing you learned about each other?
I'll start off on this one since you started the last one. So, what we learned about each other, for me to start off, when we figured out that we had to go through the in vitro process, and we took the classes and stuff like that. They showed us how to give shots and whatnot. And for me, I was just like cringing when they were saying, you have to administer all these shots, to your wife and everything. And it took me back to my wedding vows when I made that covenant and I said that, I'm going to honor my wife, in sickness and in health. And I mean, and even though, we're going through the vitro, she wasn't sick or anything like that, but I had to be the caretaker and give her all these shots. And I initially going through it, I didn't think I would be able to actually, give her a shot because I hate needles. But when there's something bigger than you, I realized in me that I was able to do a lot of different things. I didn't even know if I was a caretaker because I'm kind of like a macho guy. I was like, but I just got to see my caretaker side, whether it be giving her shots or taking her to the emergency room and stuff like that through losses and different things. And this showing my more emotional side that I didn't even knew I had. And then from what I learned from her, from Shara, I just learned that, she's one tough cookie. Even after all the losses and different things we went through and all the stuff that the female's body has to go through, I saw her take some pain that I couldn't even imagine taking. And for women who have not gone through the process, it is an arduous, it takes an arduous toll on your body from when you take it, the hormones and stuff like that. You get weight gain and stuff like that. Throughout all that, my wife still, she was still beautiful and everything. And basically, they were going through putting tubes in her body, basically harvesting the eggs directly from her body and stuff like that. So, I got to see how tough my wife was and how resilient she was to go through all that time after time again until, we brought home the promise. So, I'm not going to mess with my wife. I'm a big guy. I'm bigger than her, but she's tougher. So, I definitely learned, my wife is very, very, very resilient.
And for me, what I learned about him, he actually stole some of the things that I was going to say because that's just what he did, I guess. But I learned about his caretaker side and I learned that he can cook. So there were times where I had, different surgeries or procedures, and I was kind of down for a bit. And he started getting on YouTube and watching videos about different meals. And so he started cooking. And so ever since then, when I tell you, I can probably count on my hand how many times I've cooked. I can count on my hands because once he showed me he can cook, he took the reins and he cooks way better than me. And so that was one thing that I learned, that he can cook. Also that he is a caretaker and that he did everything for me. He was there emotionally, spiritually, and everything. I also learned that he had emotions too. And I got a chance to see him break down. He tried to hide it a lot, but there would be times where maybe he kind of went in the bathroom and he came out and his eyes were red. I knew that he had been crying and I realized that he was trying to be strong for me, but it showed me that we're both in this journey together and I can't neglect his emotions, and I need to realize that he's hurting too. And it really opened my eyes. If there was anything, the major thing that I learned was probably that about him is that a man or he feels pain just like I do. And initially it was my journey and I was going through all this stuff and I was in pain, but I realized that he was too. And so I'm appreciative for that.
Absolutely. So what is one thing that you learned about your relationship as a whole throughout your infertility journey?
I learned that we can weather the storm together, and that whatever happens in our life, good, bad, and different, that it's going to draw us closer together, because never once did either one of us get to the place where we were isolating ourselves and kind of drawing back from each other. But the entire time, it was bringing us closer and closer and closer together. And I think because we had a common goal, and it allowed me to realize that as long as you have something as a couple to look forward to and that you're doing together, you can get through anything. The only time you can really lose hope is when there's nothing to look forward to. And we kept looking forward to, to having him. And even now, we're always working on something and always looking towards something.
Yeah, I agree. It definitely brought us extremely closer together. It also was a huge confidence booster. Once we brought our rainbow baby home and stuff like that, we realized that we can accomplish anything that we set our minds to. And even if there is going to be a struggle, you've got somebody in your corner that's going to be willing to do whatever it takes to make your dreams come true. And to see our child, he's in their sleep right now, but he's definitely made one of our dreams come true. And, we're not done yet. We're campaigning her book and stuff like that now. So it's helped, going through this process has also helped both of us come out of our proverbial shells. So whether it be my emotional side and caretaker side, and for her, she's a really private person. So even doing this podcast is something out of the ordinary, because, she's not really big. Neither of us are really big into social media and blogging on Facebook and whatnot. But, she's got and you can give her the webpage too, babe, the website for your blog and your book and stuff like that. I know she's really private, but going through this journey, I realized, that we've had to be out there. Even when it came to our church family and our work family, people can't hide behind closed doors, because everybody knows when you're pregnant and stuff like that. And then when we went through the losses, you still have to go back to work, and you still have to go back to church and talk to the people and everything. So it really drew us closer together, I would say. And then and also more public facing too, with the book and everything, because I know that book is going to be a blessing to a lot of women out there who are struggling. So, and it's just that public exposure. I don't know what else I have to say to that, except for it drew us closer, but it also revealed some other characteristics that we didn't think we had either.
And I will say too, just jumping back to what I said about me realizing that Todd had emotions too, and that he hurt, it actually prompted me to interview him about our experience and add a chapter kind of dedicated to him in my book, because I wanted women to realize that, yes, you are going through the journey, and yes, you may be hurt, but don't forget about your spouse. Don't forget about your mate, because they're going through something too.
Awesome. So yes, let's tell us more about your book and give us all the details where we can find it and purchase it, and just give us a rundown.
The book, again, is titled I Still Want to Be a Mom, and it's by Shara Hutchinson. Ironically, so I wrote the book, published it, and I got the title because as I was going through the journey and I was constantly writing, as I kept mentioning, every time we would have a failure or a loss, I realized that I still wanted to be a mom. And that's when I knew that is the exact title. So I wrote my book, had it published. And once it got on Amazon, which is one of the places that it's on, I went to search for the book title on Amazon, and there is another book titled the same exact thing, I Still Want to Be a Mom. Of course, there's a different subtitle, but I thought that was pretty interesting. So I was like, wow, someone else had the same idea as me. But at any rate, my book is called I Still Want to Be a Mom, and the subtitle is An Inspirational Guide to Help Women Struggling with Infertility. It can be found on Amazon, also on Barnes & Nobles, on iBooks. It's available for Kindle and also for Nook. And the book is broken up into 3 specific parts. The first is planning, the second is preparing, and the third is pursuing. And so the first couple chapters talk about planning and go into kind of questions to ask the doctor. The second chapter talks about various aspects of what to do as you're working towards resolving your infertility and becoming a mom. I also have a chapter in there about a study that I did on women in the Bible that were barren and could not conceive, and kind of lessons that could be learned from them. Because as I was going through my journey, I was just reading and trying to figure out, how can I encourage myself? And so I have a chapter in there about that. In the preparing section, I have how to prepare your mind. I share a lot of testimonials to help encourage people, because that's one of the things that helped encourage me. Preparing your mind, preparing your body, like things to put in your body, things not to put in your body, preparing your perspective to think the right way, because sometimes, when you're going through something, it's so easy to look down and feel down about yourself and your situation. And that just perpetuates more negativity. And so how to kind of encourage yourself at times. And I share tips on how we paid for in vitro, how we did 4 transfers, and different things that we did, such as I got a part-time job for our 3rd transfer at Starbucks, because they cover in vitro and fertility treatments up to 100% for part-time workers that work an average of 20 hours a week for 90 days. And so I found different ways that we could pay for in vitro. And I did that on top of my full-time job and the ministry work that I do. And at the time I was going to school. So I share tips like that. I also share tips of, how I was able to remain positive, like doing stuff like writing a letter to my unborn child. And I have some mantras in the book of things that you can say to yourself every day to keep your mind focused. And that's in the preparing. And then the 3rd phase is the pursuing phase. And the first chapter of pursuing is called Don't Forget That He Will Be a Dad. And that's where I interview my husband and talk to him and put the answers that he provided me in the book. Also, I have devotionals in there. So 30 days of devotional in the pursuing section, because as you're pursuing, you need something to encourage yourself. And so I have scriptures and prayers that you can say that address each aspect of infertility, whether it's even learning how to be happy for other people when they are trying to conceive, or when they do conceive and you're still waiting, and how to deal with your emotions. Also, the last chapter of the book is actually called Hello, Mom, and it's written to be read once you're pregnant, because once you get pregnant, it doesn't mean those fears and those feelings go away. Because once I was pregnant with my son, I still had fears and I still had to, encourage myself. And so I have another mantra there that you can say while you're pregnant in there, to make sure that, you keep your mind focused and enjoy every aspect of your pregnancy. I talk about things that you can do to have the proper resources and tools to help get you through, like being a part of support groups, different prayers, how to plan, and how to just pretty much get through the journey and become a mom. And in the beginning, I even asked questions like, what does it mean to be a mom? Because I believe defining that will help you determine how far you are willing to go in your journey. Because I had to define that, because if I wanted to be a mom, the method of becoming a mom might have been different had I not got pregnant this last time and brought the baby home. I was willing to possibly have someone else carry the embryo for us. I was willing to adopt if necessary. I was willing to do whatever it took to become a mom, because my definition wasn't necessarily biological. It was being able to raise a child and be the caregiver for a baby. And so that was my definition. And I think when you go through a journey like this, you need to, of course, count the cost. And so in counting the cost, I also have journals at the end of each chapter that cause some introspective looking to really see how you're going to deal with your emotions and how to deal with your feelings and how to address various aspects of your infertility journey so that you can maintain and until you achieve motherhood or until you achieve bringing your baby home. Because when you're pregnant, I believe that, hey, you were a mom, like I've had several losses and I can't neglect the fact that I was pregnant and that I had a baby. The word mom there is not meaning that someone has never had a child if they had a loss, but more so bringing your baby home. Like if that's what you still want, I believe that the book will help anyone achieve that.
Awesome. And I'll make sure I link all of the links to the Kindle format as well as the actual book on Amazon in the show notes. So last question for you all is, what encouraging words can you leave the listeners out there, moms and dads who are going through their own infertility journey and just need some encouragement on this journey?
Todd, you want to go first? You want me to go?
For sure. I can go first. For the fathers out there, be the foundation for your family. Be that rock that your family needs to lean on, especially in those rough times. And also keep yourself anchored, to the chief cornerstone, which is Christ Jesus. He is the rock that our foundation lays on. And just make sure, if you're getting frustrated, going through the process back and forth and stuff like that, don't let that crack your foundation and bring you to anger or being disappointed with God and stuff like that. Be that rock that's locked fastened to Christ. And be strong for your family because they need you, and just be there emotionally, and financially willing to do whatever it is to sacrifice. Even if you have to work multiple jobs, just be a rock for your family. And that's what I would say for the men out there. The words of encouragement, a rock and foundation for your family.
Well, first I'll say I believe the only way to get the desired outcome is to refuse to quit. And after each disappointment that I went through, like I said, I couldn't shake the feeling that I still wanted to be a mom. And I truly believed that it would happen. And I chose to focus on all the successful stories that I had heard about and read about and people that I had talked to from various support groups. And I held on to their stories until I had a success story of my own. And so with that being said, I would just share 3 things that helped me to get my success stories. One, linking up with people who are going through the same journey and learn to celebrate in their success stories until you have your own. Sometimes it could be hard, and sometimes you may have to turn off social media or things like that, but you can't hide from people announcing pregnancies and things like that, and learning how to kind of shape your mind to think in a different way and be happy for those, especially people who are going through the journey with you. It showed me that, wait a minute, if it happened for them, it can happen for me too. The second thing is, I would say, always encourage others, even when you need encouragement yourself. There will be times in the support groups where I just had a loss, or I just had a failed cycle, or just had a procedure or something, and someone else would share their story. And instead of me trying to seek out somebody to encourage me, I thought, you know what? I'm going to encourage them because, hey, it doesn't, my situation doesn't take away the fact that they're hurt. And while I would encourage them, I would also encourage myself because the same words that I would say to that person applied to me as well. And so that is one thing I think that helps you, is really helping other people. And then lastly, remember that it'll happen for you. And one of my favorite things to say is it's not a matter of if it will happen, but rather when and how.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story, sharing your lights. Where can we find you all on social media?
So I am operating under my page. I Still Want to Be a Mom, so on Instagram. So at I Still Want to Be a Mom. I also have a Facebook page called I Still Want to Be a Mom. I have a personal page called Shara Love and Life, but I'm not sure if anybody can find me individually, but I think they can probably find me from my I Still Want to Be a Mom page on Facebook. My husband is not really on social media too much. I recently started getting on more with this book because I realized that if I want to help people and get the message out there, I need to be out there.
Absolutely. So thank you all for sharing your story. And I will make sure I leave all the links in the notes, the show notes and description box for you all to be able to go purchase the book as well as follow Shara on social. So thank you all so much again for sharing your story.
Thank you.
Thank you, Erica. Have a good one.
Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. I pray that this show was inspirational and a blessing to you. For show notes, visit ericaandmcafee.com/podcast. Please join us in our offline discussions in our private Facebook group by going to sistersinloss.com. If you're listening in Apple Podcasts, please rate and subscribe to us and leave us a 5-star review. I pray that you all have a blessed week. Keep the faith, and I'll talk to you next Wednesday.